Don't you think I had dreams and hopes? What about my life? What about me? I ain't got nothing else to give. What do you want from me?
Complete the mission, you get time off your prison sentence. Fail the mission, you die. Senator Trucco, did you have Trisha Stanley murdered?
And the Tony Award goes to Viola Davis.
Viola Davis.
Viola Davis.
The only thing that separates women of color from anyone else is opportunity. I became an artist, and thank God I did, because we are the only profession that celebrates what it means to live a life. When I raise my hand, I am aware of all the women who are still in silence.
So, I still get chills every time I hear that last speech that we just saw. So, this woman, Viola Davis, she's luminous, she's fierce, and she's here. Please welcome Viola Davis. Thank you, Viola. Welcome. So good. So, all of us were just blown away by that speech at the Women's March just a few weeks back, okay? So, and in it you said, nothing can be great unless it costs you something. What were you thinking when you said those words?
Exactly that.
And what did
That for me, everything has cost me something. I always say that whatever it is, whether it's motherhood, whether it's marriage, whether it's self-growth, whether it's any kind of progressive change, I think that people sometimes want to take the safe route. That they want to make a change, they want to get married to the most perfect man. And then as soon as it gets to the point where you're looking over at that person, you think, why did I marry you? You know, then, you know, you want to get out. But I think that the way life works is that it's got to cost you something. That's when you know that you've really made the sacrifices, you know. And in terms of the women's speeches, in the women's Me Too movement and the Time's Up movement, what I've seen is that there's so many other women who are in silence. There's so many other women who are in silence because of trauma, because they probably will never speak up. And I felt the need to say something about them, okay? And first of all, it cost me a lot to be able to be on that stage and share my personal story, and to even give a speech where, to be frank, I didn't know how it was being received. I really didn't.
Well, Viola, you know, I think few people really quite understand and absorbed the intense poverty that you came from. I mean, everyone at this point, I think, who reads anything about, you know, people like yourself know that you came from very poor circumstances. But the abject poverty which you grew up in was so intense, it must have taken so much from you as you lived through it. Just tell us a little bit about, you know, how you got through and lived through that intensely crippling poverty of that background.
You know, to be frank, people ask me that all the time, and I want to give a slick answer. If I told you I don't know, that would not be sufficient. But the poverty, I always say that I was rung lower than poor. I was po. That's what they say in the vernacular. Because, you know, I always talk about 128. 128 Washington Street was the first apartment we lived in. It was a third-floor apartment in a tenement house in Central Falls, Rhode Island. And that's where most of my childhood memories were formed. It was infested by rats. We would go to bed and hear rats killing the pigeons in the roof. I mean, loud, squealing noises. We would wrap our sheets around our necks at night because the rats would crawl through holes in the wall, and you could hear them eating our toys at night. and jumping on top of our beds. I always say that I was a bedwetter until I was 14. Most of the time we had no hot water. Most of the time we had no phone. Most of the time we had no food. After the public assistance check came the first of the month, you know, with 5, 6 kids, you'd buy the groceries, and 2 weeks later, the food would be gone. And then you would be hustling. And the reason why I always talk about that kind of beginning is because nobody talks about poverty. They don't. It's on no one's demographic. And now Trump, you know, wants to, you know, get rid of food stamps and have these boxes of food, you know, delivered to homes for people who are poor. It's because poor people are invisible. I know, because I was that. No one looks at you. The principal would come to school with a paper bag full of clothes, call me to the principal's office, and give me the bag of hand-me-down clothes from her kids. You know, I would go to
The shame of that for you must have just been so intense. So at the same time, you needed it, so you had to accept it. And on top of that, your father also was an alcoholic, right?
Yeah.
And he beat your mother, so you had to live with that abuse as well. What kind of a scar has that left in terms of dealing with that? What did you do as a child as you saw your father beating your mother?
Trauma. Because there is nothing you can do. Listen, when you're a kid and you look at your parents are supposed to save you. You don't have the tools to save yourself. So you're looking for them to be the guides, to be the leader. I didn't know how to do that. The only thing I knew how to do was to just stand there and be frightened, and to go to school with that trauma, to go to school being hungry, to go to school smelling. That's a big one. Okay? To go to school with that sort of shame, all right? And people on the outside, the way they see poverty as just a financial state. Poverty seeps into your mind. It seeps into your spirit because there are side effects. Listen, my father had a second-grade education. He was illiterate until he was 15. And really, until the day he died, he really didn't know how to read and write that well. So what happens? You're the product of Jim Crow, born in 1936, South Carolina. You are not educated. You come up to Rhode Island. He groomed horses for the racetrack. The 2 biggest racetracks were in Rhode Island. So guess what? You're going to be poor. Bam, bam, bam. My mom, 15, when she got married, had a first child. That's what leads to poverty.
And you've said about your mother, which I found very poignant, that you didn't even know what her dreams were, that you had no idea.
No, it's just like Aibileen Clark in The Help. No one asked her what her dreams were. You don't ask anyone what their dreams were. You know, listen, once again, it's Jim Crow. The culture determined the dreams. I'll tell you what their dreams were. I was their dream. I was the promise of the dream. That's what it was.
And you certainly more than fulfilled the dream. And there you are, this little girl, your father was abusive, to your mother, and you got out of that. That's what I find so amazing, is that who mentored you out of that? Because, in order for you went to Juilliard, and within, you got scholarships to get out of that. And you went to Juilliard, and within 3 years of getting out of Juilliard, you won a Tony Award. So it's like, this is like a supersonic exit.
Well, let me tell you something. I got out the first part by just having a drive.
Right.
Okay? I saw Miss Cicely Tyson in the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman, and I saw a physical manifestation of a dream. I saw something that I could put my feet on the floor when I got out of bed in the morning, and I had a passion that could drive me. Just drive, that's it. And I had enough people in my life that would say, that's what you want to be an actress? Oh, and everybody wants to be a star. Everybody wants to be the one that says, I mentored Viola Davis, this little black girl, who came out of poverty, okay? But that's just the first part. But at 28, I crashed and burned because emotionally I didn't get out. That as much as I did not, and I love my parents, But as much as I didn't want to be my mother's daughter, I was very much my mother's daughter. I was still very much traumatized by the past. I very much was that little girl running from 8 to 9 boys who were always calling me, you black, ugly nigger, you're ugly, you're black, you're this. It still very much was internalized in me, and it manifested itself through low self-esteem, through bad relationships, with not believing in myself. So the getting out is precarious. I emotionally did not get out. That was the second part of my
drive took
journey.
you out.
That's the second part of my narrative.
Right. So you talked about, the Me Too movement, and you did speak there about you said, I am a Me Too woman too. So talk to me about the times that you had to deal with that problem, as well as these other horrendous problems of poverty and abuse.
Because sexual assault is everywhere. Listen, let's be honest. We've just been waiting for the Me Too movement. Okay? I cannot tell you at any time in my life that I was not sexually assaulted in some way, where it was just inappropriate, men exposing themselves to me, men on the street wanting to give me money if I kissed them, going to birthday parties and have a man touch my body, we can go on, okay? You sit down with 5 or 6 other female friends, and it's like, okay, do you want to be the first one that says, or you want me to be the first one? Mm-hmm. And then you could be the first one, and then I literally got to a certain point in my life where I said, I know one woman in my life, and I know a lot of women, who's never been sexually assaulted, okay? It is so steeped into our culture that my fear is that people feel like it's only Hollywood, that the predator is the Weinstein behind a big old desk, who's just there controlling these women's careers, and you're not going to be that big actress if you don't do me this favor. When the predator is a father, a stranger, a rabbi, a teacher, you can go on, a brother, a babysitter. And the silence is not just about saving one's career. The silence is about the trauma that when it happens, you have an out-of-body experience where you leave your body and you compartmentalize that pain. And you feel like
shame. And the shame.
And the
You've
shame,
talked a lot about shame.
You speak up, you're going to be judged.
So has this moment, do you think, been cathartic for you as well? Because this has been a moment where everybody's sort of sharing their pain and their shame. I mean, is this...
Every moment is cathartic for me. Every time I share my story, it's cathartic for me. And I always say that I don't give speeches, I give testimonies. There's a difference, okay? And every time I feel like I give it, I expect absolutely nothing from people. I've gotten to the point that in my life at 52. I'm tired of waiting for people to validate me. That's not going to come. I understand that my validation literally has to come from within. So every time I share my story, I get a little bit closer to, I sat next to a life coach at a party. I always give this, I can't believe I sat next to a life coach. I was like anybody else. And as soon as I knew he was a life coach, I stopped talking. And then I think I said something that is to the effect of, I'm so disillusioned by success, I'm just tired all the time and da-da-da-da. And one of the things he said is, he says, that's because everybody works towards success. That's it. We want to be the best of the best. I got an undergraduate degree, Rhode Island College. I got a graduate degree, Juilliard. You want to look good on paper. And then you hit it, and you're disillusioned. You're not fulfilled. Because you forget about the last step, and that's significance. And it hit me in the face. Because that's actually what it's about. It is about significance. It's about the end is near. You don't know when it's going to be. But it's like Irvin Yalom says, the last person who ever has any memory of you, when that person dies, that's when you die. Mm-hmm. okay? I want my memory to last a little bit longer, you know? That's my way of being Wonder Woman, because Wonder Woman is like 9,000 years old. That's why I love Wonder Woman. So, yeah.
Okay, so there's a lot of anger, though, at the moment, obviously. This is a very, very angry moment. Do you think there's a real tipping point that's been birthed now by this movement? Or do you think this is just another inflection point? I mean, are you seeing genuine change? I mean, for instance, we saw the uproar at last Oscars, last year, about the fact there wasn't enough people of color being represented. And it was like a huge kind of thing for the year. Is this Me Too movement the thing for now, or is this really something that's taken root?
This is what I think,
Right.
okay? This is where I'm at. Yeah, it could be if you make it that. The power is in you, okay? It really is. In terms of inclusion, and I won't say diversity, because the only reason why people are talking about diversity is because it was a trending topic last year. It was a hashtag, okay? Inclusivity has to start with studio heads who greenlight movies. You can have 14 movies that a studio is developing, and 14 of them, 99% of the cast is Caucasian. You may have someone of color in the background, okay? And then you'll have the movies that are being greenlit, and they will consider someone black or Hispanic for one of the roles. But it's always a best friend, or it's always, we were gonna have a white man in this role, but we're gonna have you in this role. But you know what it is? It's a man that basically doesn't even have to have a name. He has no identity. He's in the background, maybe throwing a gavel or whatever. We'll consider you for that role. They won't consider you for the love interest. They won't consider you for a role they wrote for Sandra Bullock or Reese Witherspoon. My whole thing is, if you're dedicated to inclusivity, once again, it goes back to costing you something. Okay? You're afraid that that movie is not going to make any money internationally. You're afraid that the demographic of 18 to 34-year-old white boys who are frat boys, drinking their beer on a Thursday night are not going to tune into your show, so you can't have a 52-year-old dark-skinned black woman in the lead role, and oh my God, we're going to lose advertisers. My whole thing is, if you're dedicated to it, let it cost you something.
Let it cost
If you're dedicated to change, let it cost you something.
Cost you something. I so agree. Okay, I want to show we're at such a good moment here because in your starring role, of course, as Annalise Keating in How to Get Away with Murder, you created this iconic piece of television in the first season, and it was a scene that you actually asked to do because, referencing what you were saying, you wanted to do this scene for reasons that we can talk about in a sec, but let's just play that clip because it's a wonderful moment which you will all remember from this incredible show.
Sam?
Yeah.
Why is your penis on a dead girl's phone? I didn't so much like the line, but
So cool. So this was the scene that you really wanted to do. Why did you want to do that scene? Why was this such a...
because I said if I have to do a TV show where I have to see yet another woman who is a size 0 walking into a room and taking off her clothes like she's in a XXX rated porno movie, and she's getting ready to have sex with her husband of 20 years, and she's over the age of 50. I said, if I have to do that, I'm not the woman for you. That woman doesn't exist. I don't know who she is. Listen, I'm in menopause. I wanted to see what was behind the mask, okay? That's what I wanted. If you're telling me this woman could be sociopathic, kind of has a messed up marriage, then what I want you to do, what I'm going to force you to do, if I take off this wig and you see my hair underneath, what I'm going to force you to do is I'm going to force you to write for me. I'm going to force you to write for my pathology. Pathology is a study of tumors, okay? Psychological pathology is a study of what makes you tick. And I'm going to force you to write that. Because if I don't do it, then what you're going to write is just this, the surface, and I don't know what you're seeing. I don't trust that. You know, I may be walking into a scene with an apron on. So,
Well, obviously, working with Chandra Rhimes has been an amazingly, fantastic collaboration for the two of you. What is it you think about this dynamic of Chandra Rhimes, in you and her, and also in who she is as this amazingly revolutionary force in television? What is it that's so unique, you think, about Chandra Rhimes?
That she writes for women of color. That's it. That you see women of color leading the charge. Me, Kerry Washington as Olivia Pope, Chandra Wilson in Grey's Anatomy, and I'm sorry, I was the first black woman to win a role, the Emmy for leading actress in a drama. That says something.
Well, it does.
And it's not something.
By the way, you also have the trifecta, because you have a Tony, an Emmy, and an Oscar. And I don't think that even your friend Meryl Streep has been able to do that. You beat
Meryl.
You beat
Yes.
old Meryl O'Mara.
That's what she's done. As much as you may criticize it, I don't care. You may call it a soap opera, but I always say, okay, call it a soap opera. Who, like Annalise Keating, do you see on TV, even cable? What black woman do you see in a lead role that is a whirling dervish, that has no structure? That's why I say you don't put me in a box. Just like, what's that character, Baby from Dirty Dancing? Don't put Baby in the box. You don't put me in a box either. I think I'm vast. I really do.
So, do you, in this big Me Too movement now, you are so committed to seeing the expression of women of color, seen in the round. Do you feel that there's enough black voices of women in the Me Too movement right now? Are you seeing enough of them?
Do I think that there's voices? Yes. Do I think that they're included in the conversation at the table? No. I'm just being honest with you.
Right.
In a lot of these gatherings that we have in Hollywood, and I could name them, but I don't want to call them out because I don't want to look like I'm not in solidarity with women. I am. Everyone knows that, okay? You have to know that. But I go to these organizations, I go to these gatherings, and I'll see 3,000 women in that room, CEOs, producers, executives, Caucasian women, and I'll see 5 women of color, and it's by invite.
Wow.
And we have statistics, unlike no statistics out there. If we get raped by the time before we reach 18, there's a 66% more chance we will get raped again. 70% of women, girls who are being sex trafficked, are girls of color. Remember the women from D.C.
Yeah, and we
who were
just saw
missing?
Emily Kennedy's amazing presentation, because the girls that are being trafficked are girls in foster care, girls of color who are being,
Absolutely.
nobody's looking for them.
And we won't talk about gender inequality of pay, because a lot of the women who've stepped forward, and I stand in solidarity with them, okay? What they're getting paid, which is half of what a man is getting paid, well, we get probably a tenth of what a Caucasian woman gets. And I'm number 1 on the call sheet. And then I have to go in and I have to hustle for my worth. That's what I feel like I'm doing. When I demand what I feel, listen, I have more than a 30-year professional career. I had a friend who said, yeah, but Viola, your career is better than my career. I said, yeah, but you can't compare me to you. Because once again, I got the Oscar, I got the Emmy, I got the 2 Tonys. I've done Broadway, I've done off-Broadway, I've done TV, I've done film, I've done all of it. I have a career that's probably comparable to Meryl Streep, Julianne Moore, Sigourney Weaver. They all came out of Yale. They came out of Juilliard. They came out of NYU. They had the same path as me. And yet, I am nowhere near them. Not as far as money, not as far as job opportunities, nowhere close to it. And yet, I have to constantly get on that phone, and I have fabulous agents, by the way. They are getting it. But I have to get on that phone, and people say, you're a black Meryl Streep. You are, and we love you. We love you. There is no one like you. Okay, then if there's no one like me, you think I'm that, you pay me what I'm worth. You give me what I'm worth. And not, and even in terms of roles, because when I delve into a role, I want something complicated too. I do. Just like building the most unbelievable structure, a sculptor wants to build the most unbelievable building. That's how I feel, that's what I do as a human being, as an artist. I want to build the most complicated human being. But what I get is the third girl from the left.
Well, you make a lot out of that, I have to say. In Doubt.
Listen,
I've got to say that in Doubt.
I get it, Tina.
Right, in Doubt, I think you were on the screen actually for about 8 minutes, but you got, Best Supporting Actress Oscar out of it because you were so unbelievably memorable and incredible. It's almost as if you wanted to bring more depth than is there on the page because you got to, as you say, hustle your worth, right?
You do, and it's like I told you, is I've gotten to the point, I'm no longer doing that. I'm not hustling for my worth. I'm worthy. When I came out of my mom's womb, I came in worthy. And just like, you'll have a Shailene Woodley, who's fabulous, and she may have had 37 magazine covers in 1 year. 37. And then you'll have someone, a young actress of color, who's on her same level of talent and everything, who may get 4. And there is a sense in our culture that we have to be happy with that. And I always mention what Shonda Rhimes said when she got the Norman Lear Award at the Producers Guild Award about 2-3 years ago. She held it up, and she said, I accept this award because I believe I deserve it. Because when I walk in the room, I ask for what I want, and I expect to get it. And that's why I believe I deserve this award, because Norman Lear was a pioneer, and so am I.
Wow.
And if that's revolutionary for a woman, but it's doubly revolutionary as a woman of color, because we have been riding the caboose of the train. We really have. And it's time enough for that. This is a year.
Well, look, Black Panther, right? Black Panther's opening this week. New York Times is saying this is an absolute tipping point, an iconic moment for, changing that paradigm. Do you think that we are now again with Black Panther just about to open?
Once again.
Jordan Peele's movie.
Yes.
Is this now a moment when it's changing?
Yes, but once again, like I told you, it changes if you want it to change. You have to be the change. It's great that we have GoFundMe pages where schools are now, they want to fund students to go see Black Panther, to see those images, because they know how powerful that can, and how that could be the instrumental change in that young person's life.
As Cicely Tyson was
all
for
of
you.
that. Yeah, but there needs to be GoFundMe pages for all movies of color. We need to be that dedicated even for Shaniqua Watkins, who's coming out of Wayne State University in Detroit, who puts pen to paper and says, I just have a story. I just want to write a story off the top of my head. And it's the most brilliant story in the world. We need to support her too, just like we support Greta Gerwig, who wrote Lady Bird. Just like we support Sean Baker, I don't know, who did Florida Project. That our stories, our narratives, even if it came from the deep recesses of our brain, or if it's coming out of a history book, if it's August Wilson, or if it's the Harriet Tubman story, all of those stories need a GoFundMe page. And if you're not doing it, then we're just going to get 1 or 2 successful movies and 3 or 4 years of a desert of nothing, and sitting back and say, what happened?
Well, you're doing all this producing now, so you're owning that course of
Yes.
events. And that is a wonderful thing to know. We have to stop. I wish we didn't. Viola Davis, the magnificent and mighty Viola Davis. An inspiring woman. An inspiring woman. We're going to go fund you forever. Come. Okay.